Hi friends and welcome. My name is Guido and I wanted to just spend a couple minutes introducing the Natural Cardio Care class where we'll talk about cardiovascular health, the health of the heart muscle and of the blood vessels, and talk about some of the most common diseases that would kind of fit under that umbrella. Cardiovascular health is one of the biggest concerns of modern medicine, and rightly so. It's one of the biggest sources of mortality and of ill health in modern Western culture. But as an herbalist, I like to kind of try and reframe the way we think about our hearts and the way we think about our blood vessels a little bit for a couple of reasons. One, I think it gives us a better and somewhat more profound understanding of this amazing system. But second, it lets us interface with our knowledge about the medicinal plants that can be useful for cardiovascular health in kind of a entirely new way, but also a very old and very wise way. So it's a way to understand how the energetic systems that we'll be talking about and the plants that can address those systems can be brought to bear in the context of cardiovascular health. I'd love to just talk through all of that in the context of our modern understanding of the heart and blood vessels throughout this class. By the end of it, you can expect a couple of things. Not only a pretty detailed understanding of the modern ways we think about diseases of the heart and blood vessels, but also a really well-rooted understanding of the medicinal plants that can be brought to improve health in the context of the cardiovascular system, and really why those plants can be used, both from a traditional energetic system based understanding and from the more modern context when we talk about using plants like hawthorn alongside a range of different medicines that the people we love might have in their life for the purpose of helping their heart and blood vessels. And when we think about the heart and vessels, the classic understanding is this pump that moves fluid through these tubes. And while that is very classic, it also kind of misses the mark, I think, in terms of really understanding the beauty, complexity, and wisdom of the cardiovascular system as a whole. In our bodies, I don't think there's really any other process or system that better mirrors the way natural living ecologies flow. If we're talking, for example, about springs and streams and rivers, wetlands and oceans, the great cycles of moisture as they rise up into the air and become rain clouds and repeat the cycle all over again, or when we're talking about the branching of plants and trees and the xylem and phloem that moves fluid across them, really nothing else in our system mirrors that as well as our cardiovascular system does. And so having that ecological understanding takes diseases like high blood pressure or angina or cardiac arrhythmia or the aging of our heart and things like heart attack or congestive heart failure and reframes them in completely new and different terms. Not that it's not important to understand these diseases, but as an herbalist, as a person who uses plants and food to improve people's lives, for me it's more useful to really see how the ecology of something like the cardiovascular system, how it all interconnects, and what the key threads and elements of that living system are, becomes much more useful as a way to understand what's going on. So that's really what we'll be talking about in this class, looking at the disease processes, but then backing up and understanding what the driving ecological understanding of the cardiovascular system as a whole might be. And we'll start to see maybe 4 important areas that emerge over and over again. We might start by looking at high blood pressure, but we'll come right back to things like fluid balance and the function of the endothelium. So those 4 areas are, first of all, the health of the endothelium, the inner intimate lining of the cardiovascular system. If we're talking about the heart and blood vessels as a garden, the endothelium is its soil. Another area we'll come back to over and over again is fluid balance itself, the movement of fluid across the body. And in the cardiovascular system. And in these cases, we'll be talking with terms like stagnation and blockage, or the flow of warmth and vitality and opening things up. Those types of terms relate to the movement and flow of fluid. And in these cases, fluid flow is very much like fluid flow in a living garden system itself. Reservoirs, irrigation channels, and making sure that the delivery of that vital moisture can happen to every nook and cranny of the garden in correct measure, the way all the different plants that are growing in the garden need that fluid. Another place we'll come back to over and over again. It's what we might call inflammatory balance. And we see this in the body across the board, inflammatory signals, right? We'll be talking about what that means and how we can assess it and how we can impact it. And if we're going back to our garden analogy, these would be the inhabitants of the garden, things like microbes, but also insects and other animals, and of course the plants themselves that grow and thrive in that garden system. So a lot of the inflammatory cytokines, the players like immune cells, we can think of them as inhabitants of the garden, right, in that same way. And last but not least, we'll be talking about the heart-spirit link, how our heart fits, how this ecology of the cardiovascular system fits inside the context of the whole human being, and especially how it connects to our stress and our mood and our personality. It's a two-way street, right? The heart affects the spirit and the spirit affects the heart. So in this way, just like ecologies affect weather patterns, we can think of this sort of heart-spirit link as the weather that flows across our garden. Sometimes it's unpredictable. Sometimes we have to deal with a storm, and that's fine. But a resilient garden should be able to handle a storm once in a while. And also we have to remember that the sum total of all of the gardens, of all the ecologies across a continent, have a big role to play in that massive cycle of water throughout the ecology. So similarly, our cardiovascular system has a lot to say about what our mood and our stress are like on a day-to-day basis. And being able to plug into that loop as an herbalist gives us an amazing way to impact heart health, but also the health of the spirit too. Finally, because we'll be talking about cardiovascular health in both natural and ecological terms, all of these different type of assessments, like looking at the tongue or looking at the pulse and feeling the radial pulse, looking at color or physiognomy, and assessing patterns of behavior in the people we love or in ourselves, will start to make a whole heck of a lot more sense when we remember flow, when we remember inflammatory balance, and some of those ecological concepts that we'll explore in the class. And finally, the way the plants impact those assessments and also impact the modern disease names that we'll be exploring, all of that will come together in a way that I think as herbalists will make a lot of sense to us and allow us to create not only customized protocols for impacting what people might call diseases in the context of heart health, but also plug people into this very wise and effective way of understanding the cardiovascular system in the context of a living, thriving, flowing ecology. So I hope these will be interesting concepts and interesting ideas for us to explore together. We'll have a period of question and answer in every class, and also a sort of summary for bringing all of these threads back together at the end and being able to move forward with confidence in your life to help improve the heart health for yourself and the people you love. So thanks a lot, and I hope to see you soon.